She left, and he was left with millions, a legacy or a trap. Now he has to decide whether this will be his salvation or his end. I'm 36 years old. I've been married for 8 years. We have 2 kids, and everything was supposed to be fine. Except it wasn't. It started with my dad. He was sick, terminal, in fact. Kidney failure had been creeping up on him for years. But recently, things had gone from bad to worse. Now, twice a week, I had to take him to dialysis. He wasn't getting any better. Every time I get the call to take him, it hit me harder. This man, my father, had always been there for me, but I hadn't been able to be there for him. He had once asked me to join his business, but I refused. I went into programming instead, knowing my path was different, yet my father's legacy felt like a weight every day. Still, I couldn't deny I loved him. But my wife, that was where everything started to unravel. Ale, my wife, wasn't happy about it. The first few weeks, she kept quiet, but soon enough, she couldn't hold it in. "Why are you wasting your time with him?" she asked. "He's never going to appreciate you. You'll never be good enough for him." Her words stung, but I didn't show it. I didn't want to argue, not while my father's health was deteriorating. She was right about one thing, though. My father had been a hard man. He had made it clear that he wouldn't give me a penny of his fortune because I refused to take over his business. He said, "If you won't carry the torch, I'll give everything to charity." I still hadn't joined his company, and my pride kept me away. Even when Ale asked me to help with her family's business, I didn't budge. But her words about my dad started to change the dynamic. When I told her I'd be taking my dad to dialysis, she lost it. She said it was pointless, a waste of time, and worse. She blamed my dad for everything that went wrong in our lives. It wasn't the first time, but it hit harder now. I tried to explain, to make her see that my dad needed me, but she couldn't understand. She didn't want to. Wednesdays and Saturdays became battlegrounds in my own home. Ale would plan dinners, parties, family outings, anything that would pull me away from my responsibilities. I tried to explain that Saturdays were off limits, that I had to be there for my father, but it didn't matter. She insisted I didn't care about her, about the family. I couldn't keep up. I was juggling work, my dad's condition, and the constant tension at home. Every time I came back from dialysis, Ale was waiting to pick a fight. It was never about the kids, never about what really mattered. It was about control. She had her own resentment, and now I was caught in the crossfire. One day, I came home later than usual, and as I opened the door, the silence hit me like a punch. The kids weren't in sight. Ale was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes glued to her phone. Her mood was different, sharper, colder. "Where are the kids?" I asked, trying to keep it light. She didn't respond right away. And then I heard their voices, muffled but unmistakable, from the living room. I walked toward them, tried to shake off the unsettling feeling in my gut. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, I caught sight of my daughters sitting on the couch, huddled together. I couldn't hear their exact words, but the ones I did catch made my blood run cold. "We don't even have to call Dad anymore," one of them said. "He's not our real father." I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. I had raised them. I had been there through every scraped knee, every school play, every late night. How could they think that? My breath caught in my throat. The words echoed in my head. Not our real father. I should have walked in and confronted them, but I didn't. Something in me told me to hold back, to give them a moment. I stepped back, slowly. The silence in the house felt suffocating. The next few days were a blur. The tension in the house grew. Ale didn't bring it up, but I could feel it between us. My daughters avoided me, wouldn't look me in the eye. My wife didn't help. It was like we were strangers in our own home. I thought things couldn't get worse. But they did. The fights became public. Ale screamed at me in front of the kids, told me I was worthless, that I was a failure as a father and husband. And as my father's health continued to decline, I had to ask myself, what was I fighting for? But I was done pretending. If Ale wanted me to choose between her and my father, the decision had already been made. I had responsibilities, real ones, and I wouldn't back down. Then came the bombshell, the one that shattered everything. The fight had been brutal. Ale and I stood at opposite ends of the living room. The kids in the other room, oblivious to the tension thick in the air. My mind raced. What had we become? A family? Or just two people trapped in an endless cycle of blame, resentment, and unspoken regrets? My father's condition worsened. He was barely able to leave the house now. He needed constant help, and while Ale had been insistent on me staying home more, I couldn't. I couldn't leave him, not now. He was my father, weak, but still a man who had given me everything, even if it wasn't what I wanted. But in Ale's eyes, I was being selfish. Her words, the same ones that had echoed in my mind for months, now haunted me louder than ever. "You can't keep doing this," she told me one evening, her voice thick with anger. "It's either him or me. Pick." I didn't respond right away. What could I say? How could I even begin to explain that the choice wasn't really mine to make? I couldn't abandon my father, not when he had nothing left but me. And Ale, what had we become? Every argument seemed to pull us farther apart. She stormed out that night, slamming the door behind her. I couldn't even remember the last time we'd slept in the same bed. It was like we were two strangers sharing a house. Alone, always alone. The silence was deafening, but it didn't last long. The next morning, after I'd left to take my dad to dialysis, Ale did something that changed everything. She sent me divorce papers. It was as if she had been planning it for months, waiting for the right moment. I didn't even have to read the words before I knew what they said. Ale was done, and honestly, part of me was relieved. The weight that had been building inside me for months, maybe even years, began to lift. But that's when the truth hit, the cold, hard truth that had been hiding beneath all of this. It wasn't just Ale leaving. It wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was what happened next. Ale wasn't just leaving me. She was walking out of our life, the kids, and everything that had ever mattered. She didn't even ask for custody of the kids. It was almost as if she had already moved on. She had found someone else. It was clear now, and that realization shattered what little was left of my hope for us. I didn't call her. I didn't beg. I signed the papers, folded them neatly, and sent them back. Done. But Ale wasn't done with me yet. The phone calls came in constant, frantic, desperate. She cried, cursed me, pleaded. I didn't answer. Then, the next day, she came to my father's house. She wanted to talk. She begged me to listen. And that's when it all fell apart. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't even asking for a second chance. She was begging for something else. Something darker. I was wrong, she admitted, but it wasn't an apology. I was wrong, but I need you to know something. It's not about the kids. It's about the money. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "I've been watching," she continued, her eyes hollow. "I've been watching you, and I saw what was coming. You're a millionaire now, aren't you? From your father's will." My world froze. My father had cut me out years ago. He had threatened to give everything to charity. But now, after all of this, there was one thing I hadn't seen coming. The truth. When I went to the lawyer's office, I had expected nothing. A formality. A sad closure. But instead, I found out that my father hadn't left me a penny of his business or fortune. But there was one thing I hadn't known. My father's will had never changed. Everything, his company, his wealth, his house, was mine. And Ale knew. She had known for weeks. She had been following the news, watching every moment of my life unfold, all the while pretending to move on. But now she wanted back in. She wasn't here for forgiveness. She wasn't here to fight for the family we had. She was here because she knew I had inherited everything. Her game plan had always been about the money. She never wanted me back. She wanted what was mine. And she wasn't alone. Her parents still behind her, their expressions a mix of arrogance and desperation. "Please," she begged, "let me come back. For the kids. For us. You know how much we need this." I stared at her, at the woman who had left me, who had torn apart our life, now begging to come back because of the money. The same woman who had claimed I wasn't good enough for her, that I wasn't worth the time. "I don't care about the money," I said, my voice cold. But I care about something else. You never cared about me. You never cared about us. You only cared about what you could get. Her face twisted in shock. She wasn't ready for this. You think I'll forgive you? After everything? I shook my head. You can keep your apologies, Ale. I'm done. This is over. I turned away and walked toward the stairs. But before I could leave, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I don't care about your money, she said, voice shaking. But I'll tell you one thing. You'll never get to enjoy it. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The following days were a blur of decisions. I was numb, detached. The world kept spinning, but everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. Ale's desperation became suffocating, but I couldn't let her back into our lives. I couldn't let her tear me apart again, especially now that everything had changed. But her words kept haunting me. You'll never get to enjoy it. It echoed in my mind as I walked through the house, the one I had inherited from my father, the one he had left to me. It felt wrong. It wasn't a gift. It was a reminder of everything that had gone wrong, of all the years I had spent trying to make peace with a man who had never understood me. Ale and her parents weren't the only ones watching. The entire town knew I had inherited my father's fortune, and soon enough, I became a target. People I hadn't seen in years started showing up at my door. Old friends, distant relatives. Everyone had a sudden interest in the business, the house, the money. And then came the phone calls. The ones I dreaded. It was Ale again. I just want to see the kids, she said, her voice strained. I miss them. I wanted to scream, but instead I stayed calm. You can't come back. Not now. Not ever. But she wouldn't stop. Every message, every call was the same. She had to get back into my life, into my kids' lives. Then, one evening, I walked into the house after a long day of handling the business. The kids were with me, and they were playing in the living room. It felt peaceful, but that peace didn't last long. Ale showed up at my door again. This time, she didn't even wait for me to answer. She barged in, her face flushed with anger and desperation. I need you to listen to me, she snapped. I've made a mistake. I was wrong, okay? I was selfish, but I want to make things right. I want to be a family again. I want the kids. I want everything back. Her words were like venom, twisting everything inside me. I had tried for years to make her see me, to show her that I loved her. But now it was clear. She never cared about me. She only cared about what I could give her. And now that she knew I had everything, she wanted back in. But I wasn't going to fall for it. Get out, I said quietly. She froze, her face paling. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. No, I can't. I need this. Please. I've changed. I've learned. I'll be the woman you always wanted me to be. I'll be there for you and the kids. But it was too late. It was too late for us. She didn't understand what I had been through, what I had sacrificed. She couldn't even begin to grasp the weight of it. The woman I had loved had never existed. She had been a lie. You'll never get another chance, I told her coldly. You didn't care about me when I needed you, and now you want to play the victim. It's over. I turned away, walking toward the kids. But she wasn't done. You'll regret this, she spat, her eyes flashing with fury. You'll regret letting me go. I stopped at the door to the kids' room. I won't regret anything. What I regret is ever believing you. The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The weight on my chest, the tension in my mind, it all lifted. But then the real shock came. The next morning, I went to the lawyer's office to finalize everything. The will, the business, the inheritance. It was all so much to process. I kept thinking about my dad, about how he had pushed me away. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the money. It was about something much deeper. It was about legacy. And I was finally going to take control of mine. When I sat down in front of the lawyer, I thought the worst was over. But he handed me something new, a letter from my father. My father hadn't just left me the business. He hadn't just given me the house. He had written me a letter, one that I had never seen before. In it, he apologized. It was strange, unnerving. My father had never been a man of words, and now, after all these years, he was speaking to me from beyond the grave. He acknowledged our differences. He admitted that he had been wrong to hold me back, to push me into his world when I clearly didn't belong. But then came the part that hit me hardest. My legacy is yours now, he had written. But more than that, I want you to build your own. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't let anyone dictate who you are or what you become. I wish I had learned that sooner. It wasn't just about the money. It was about redemption. I sat there, holding a letter in my hands, trying to digest everything. I had spent so much of my life chasing approval from a man who would never give it. And now I was free. Free to make my own decisions. Free to build my own future. The lawyer smiled at me, noticing my stunned silence. Your father believed in you more than you know. And now it's your turn to believe in yourself. That was it. That was the turning point. The days after Ale left felt strange, almost surreal. The house was quiet, but the kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle. I should have been celebrating my newfound freedom, the inheritance, the chance to finally carve out my own future. But instead, I felt like I was drowning in decisions I wasn't ready to make. The weight of the house, the business, and my father's legacy all felt heavier than I'd imagined. I had to make the calls, take control of everything that had been thrust upon me, whether I wanted it or not. The company had a team in place, but I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't want to be my father, but in so many ways, I could see the parts of him in me. The way he had tried to control everything. The way he had made decisions without consulting anyone. And then there was the issue of my father's charity work. Ale had always dismissed it, but my father had poured so much into it. It wasn't just a business to him. It was his way of giving back, a way to make up for everything he felt he hadn't done right in his own life. I sat in his office, the one I'd never wanted, and stared at the old desk where he had spent years making decisions that affected everyone around him. I had to decide now. Would I continue his legacy, or would I completely cut ties with everything he had built? But that wasn't the hardest part. No, the hardest part was still to come. It was a week after Ale had left when she showed up again. This time, it wasn't just a visit. It was a demand. She brought her parents with her. The three of them showed up at the door unannounced, their expressions cold, like they were entitled to something. And in their eyes, they were. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness, Ale said, her voice tight with emotion. I'm here because you're not going to let all this go to waste. You have to understand, everything I did because I love you. I always have. I stared at her. She didn't seem the least bit remorseful. She didn't apologize for the way she had abandoned me. No, now she was speaking as if everything was still negotiable, as if I could just forgive her and bring her back into my life. But I knew better. I had seen the true side of her now, the side that was after more than just love. It was after money. Her parents stood behind her, silent, but their presence was heavy. They didn't speak, but I knew what they wanted. They wanted to be in control, like they had always been, and they thought that now, with the fortune in my hands, they could manipulate me into doing what they wanted. I don't need you, I said, my voice calm but firm. I don't need your apologies, and I don't need your manipulation. You left me. You left me and the kids. I'm done. Ale's face twisted with frustration. She looked at her parents, who exchanged glances but said nothing. They were waiting for me to back down, waiting for me to crumble under the pressure. But I didn't. I'm not the man you think I am anymore, I said, each word hitting harder than the last. You had your chance, and you blew it. Now you're not getting a second one. Leave. Now. Her mother opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give them the chance. I walked toward the door and opened it, ushering them out. When they left, the silence in the house felt more permanent. Ale was gone for good. Her parents, the ones who had tried to control everything, were gone too. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. The business, the fortune, the house, all of it now belonged to me. And now I had to decide what to do with it. There were people depending on me. People who had been loyal to my father. The employees, the workers. the ones who had been with him for years, through everything. I couldn't just let it all fall apart. But something else was happening, too. People started to show their true faces. My father's lawyer called me a few days later. He said there was something I needed to see, something that couldn't wait. So I went. When I sat down in front of him, he handed me a file. It was thick, heavy with papers, and I didn't know what to expect. But when I opened it, the shock hit me like a freight train. It was a list of debts. Huge, unreported debts my father had racked up over the years. The charity, the foundation, the business. It was all a front for something much darker. My father had been in financial trouble for years. He had hidden it from everyone, including me. The business wasn't worth what I thought it was. The estate wasn't secure as I had believed. And the debts? They were enough to bury me. I sat there, stunned, as the lawyer explained everything. My father had left me everything, yes, but he had also left me with a sinking ship, a legacy of lies, a web of debts that I now had to untangle. And the worst part? It wasn't just the money. It was a realization that I was trapped. My father had given me everything, but in doing so, he had set me up for failure. I had no choice but to face the truth. The fortune was mine, but it came with strings attached. Strings that could pull me down into the depths of financial nightmare. But that wasn't all. There was one more thing. A letter from my father buried deep inside the file. A final message that would change everything. The letter from my father sat in front of me, its edges worn from years of being tucked away, waiting for this moment. The lawyer had said nothing as I stared at it, unable to move, too stunned to speak. I felt my pulse racing, the weight of it pressing down on me. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head. Make the right choice. It's never about what you inherit. It's about who you become. But what did that even mean now? My father, the man who had always tried to control me, had given me everything and nothing all at once. The business, the house, the money, it was mine, but it was also a burden. I ripped open the letter, my hand shaking. The handwriting was neat, but the words on the page didn't match the man I thought I knew. If you are reading this, then I am gone. And with my passing, so too is everything I built. But let me make one thing clear. This is not a gift. This is a test. I am leaving you with the pieces, but you must decide how to put them together. My heart clenched. I felt like I was suffocating. I know you wanted something different for your life. But you must understand, legacy is more than a name, more than money. It is the lives you touch, the choices you make, and the person you become when everything else falls away. Do not be like me. Do not make the mistakes I made. Take the inheritance if you must, but do not let it control you. You are not me, and you do not have to be. The words blurred in front of my eyes. My father had given me a chance, a choice, a chance to take everything and build something better, or to walk away and find a way to be free. I stared at the file of debts, still sitting on the lawyer's desk. I could feel it all pulling at me. The house, the company, the people who depended on me now. But my father's final message was clear. I didn't have to be trapped in the same cycle. I had spent my entire life trying to prove myself to a man who would never understand me. But now, I had a chance to prove something to myself. To break free from the legacy of pain, resentment, and control that had defined my relationship with him. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't keep pretending that the inheritance would fix everything. It wouldn't fix me. It wouldn't fix the broken relationships. And it sure as hell wouldn't fix the damage that had been done. I'm not taking it, I said, more to myself than to the lawyer. I'm not taking any of it. The lawyer blinked, clearly confused. You mean the business? The estate? I nodded. I mean everything. Sell it. Give it away. I don't care. I'll take nothing. He was silent for a long time, and I could feel his eyes on me, waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. This was my choice now. I walked out of the office, leaving behind the weight of my father's legacy. I didn't know what the future would hold. I didn't know if I would ever be truly free of the shadow he cast over me. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. But freedom came at a price. Ale called me again, but this time, I didn't hesitate. I answered the phone. "You're out of your mind," she spat. "You're throwing away everything we built, everything I worked for, everything your father gave you. You're nothing without it." I was calm, too calm. "Maybe I am, but I'm not your pawn. I'm not your prize. And I'm not going to be your backup plan." There was a long pause, and I knew she was trying to think of something to say, something to make me change my mind. But I wasn't listening anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. "I'm moving on," I said. "And you should too." The line went dead. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. And for the first time in a long time, it was the kind of nothing I needed. I went home to the house I had inherited, the house I had chosen not to claim. The kids were there, waiting for me. They didn't need to know everything, not yet, but I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. We could start over. We could build something new, together. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine, and that was enough.